Welcome everybody to our first Defense Entrepreneurs Forum Pitch Night. DEF's mission is to inspire, connect, and empower, and to promote a culture of innovation in the national security community. The Cornerstone program, which is a part of DEF, is dedicated to substantive training for entrepreneurs and venture capital investors. We've had courses so far in the workshops in the past on pricing, angel investing, financial modeling, fundraising, all of that. Occasionally we'll do life skills. So actually Christine, who is one of our pitch directors, gave a presentation on what are life skills, or what's it like to be an employee at an early stage company. It was really good. So this is our first pitch night. We're going to have two kinds of pitch nights. We're going to have angel VC pitch nights, and we're going to have government contracting pitch nights because it's very different. We'll have a mock government contracting officer or officers. So tonight it's VC angel, and it's this great opportunity for two companies to pitch. And just a larger point about Cornerstones. In terms of our workshops, if you want to speak or there's a topic that you want to hear, let us know, because your agenda is our agenda. We'd like to give visibility to DEF members and also to make sure that any areas of interest we cover. And now I'm going to turn it over to our pitch night directors, Christine and Rama.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Liao Young. I'm one of the pitch directors here for DEF, work with Rama, and it's an exciting night to have our first pitch event. And I'm going to introduce you to our two judges we have with us this evening. First, we have Chris Campbell, who is currently the chief strategist at Crow, and he was the former assistant secretary of the Treasury, a financial institution, and also the staff director of the U.S. Senate Committee on Finance. Our second judge is Peter Doge. He is the founder of AOX Foundry, where he manages a seed fund for early stage that invests in early stage startups. And he's also an advisor for numerous startups. And he's the president of TIX, which is a boutique software development company that provides tech infrastructure. So these are our two judges. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host Rama, who will introduce the founders.
Christine, do you want to introduce yourself? And then
Sure. So I personally have a fintech background myself. I spent about a decade in the world of fintech, working as an early employee for an early stage fintech that I helped to build a cash management product. I'm currently an independent COO and fintech advisor.
Thanks, Christine. And I'm a startup founder. I've done a few startups. The last one was just recently acquired by a company called OneTrust, so in the privacy space. And so I'm very passionate about helping founders, so hence why I'm here today. So with that, I'll turn it over and I'll briefly introduce the founders that we have today. Very exciting. So we have Dan Cohen from Flight Material Sciences. And what they do is materials defouling technology applying lasers. And we have Brian Lee from Candalytics, and they leverage LiDAR technology to develop advanced analytics for 3D and other data. So with that, we'll turn it over to the first founder to present today. So the format will be around 10 minutes for the presentation and leaving 7 minutes for Q&A. And we'll try to be as close to that as we can. And there'll be, if you have any questions from the audience, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll look to bring that up during this 7-minute Q&A. So with that, over to you, Dan.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Is that coming through all right? Okay, so good evening, everyone. We went ahead by itself. And thanks for being here tonight. Very much appreciated. It's a privilege to present to the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum. I'm Dan Cohen, and I'm the founder of Flight Material Sciences. Now, in 2016, I was the CTO of a solar structures company, and we were trying to find some way of keeping ice and snow and frost off of solar panels. And I didn't really find what we wanted in the coding sector or in the research labs, but we did find this technology, and what we saw blew us away, and it became obvious right away that this needed to be what we concentrated on. So What we're talking about is a completely new method of treating trusted industrial materials to prevent problems that occur on the surface. And every corner of defense and industry rely on these complicated technical products. And these devices fail when their surfaces fail because of rust or fouling or ice. So we're going to use this technology to protect life and improve operating performance and reduce maintenance cycles and costs. So this technology took about 30 years to develop, but we're going to teach it to you in about 60 seconds. This is the surface of stainless steel. And when it's magnified, you can see that it's rough and random. And protective coatings are applied, and the risk and loss occur when they fail inevitably. And cleaning and reapplying these coatings also takes critical equipment out of service. So we have a patented technique to sculpt a new functional surface. And this new functional surface on familiar materials, for example, this one repels water, and it occurs at the microscopic scale. So this is what superhydrophobic metal looks like up close. This is just a piece of stainless steel that's tilted at 3 degrees, and liquids don't just run off, but they bounce off the surface, and they take with it any dust or debris. And if water doesn't stay on the surface, then ice doesn't hold there, and rust doesn't form there, and bacteria doesn't grow there. So our patented treatment has many of the benefits of the best protective coatings with none of the downsides. So we're not adding or taking away things from the surface, and we're not mixing something into the metal to change it. We just make improvements to the surface that you already use and trust. And we can be applied to places where many coatings can't go. It's 100% green, and it can even be combined with critical coatings in some sectors. So when we talk about functional surfaces, it means we're making a surface that's not just decorative, but can repel water or oil, or attract water or oil, or kill bacteria and viruses on the surface, or reduce heat and friction buildup on metals and glasses and plastics, or ceramics or polymers or semiconductors or composites. So this is a fantastic new technology that applies to almost every solid material in use. So you might believe that micro and nanoscale textures are fragile, but we've seen very encouraging results. And the stronger the material, the more durable the benefits. So we're ready to demonstrate these benefits for the materials and conditions of your choosing. So every year, the defense sector spends about $7 billion on fuel and about $21 billion more on corrosion methods. And it doesn't take much imagination to see where we can apply these kind of benefits. So we've got a catalog of validated opportunities in each sector, and each one is its own billion-dollar problem area for us to disrupt. So these flight projects are dual use in nature, and the proof of concept work can be adapted for both defense applications and conditions. We're already talking to people in aviation about icing and drag and helicopter parts as well as drones. We're talking about improving body armor so that it lasts 4 times longer in rough conditions than it would otherwise last. We're talking about keeping camera lenses clear for sensors for autonomous vehicles or for self-driving cars in the industry. Rust, of course, is its own problem, and we're also making improvements to solar glass, both on Earth and in space. So to make sure that our innovations have maximum utility, it's not just one technology. We're working on integrating it with related maintenance procedures. So the same lasers can also remove rust and clean debris, or apply diamond coatings to material, or harden the material instead of shot peening or similar techniques. Sorry, it's going a little bonkers here. We also have a partnership with a micron scale additive manufacturing company so that if people want textures on very small, complex equipment, we can make those textures out of the box. So the company has had a strong beginning. It's actually our 3rd anniversary this week. And we've now got licenses from 4 different institutions for a library of what is now 12 patents and 5 partner labs. And we've been very fortunate to be recognized in the startup and innovation community, including last year's Entrepreneurship World Cup in Dubai, where we were named number 2 out of 167,000 startups worldwide. The work has created a big pipeline for us. So there's a list of Global 1000 clients waiting for us to have more capacity to produce. And our first customers really come from a variety of industrial sectors and problem areas. They're all looking to solve a 100-year-old problem that the coatings industry hasn't solved. So our network and innovation scouting and industry associations like DEF have provided the rest of the opportunities. Now the team is growing. We've got more than 100 years of experience in early stage science and tech in the executive office, but also clean tech and medical science. And we're building the team with experts in water and in aviation and in energy and other sectors. So we're now a team of 9 and hope to add 3 more by the end of June. And our network from Techstars and other accelerators have also supplied us with fantastic advisors from both investor and industry perspectives. Now, COVID-19, we thought it would really slow our growth. We thought we'd be getting 4 projects over the last year, but there are currently 16 planned, and there's a pipeline of more than 150 customer inquiries, and we've spent 0 marketing dollars. So we have some development work to do, building prototypes for manufacturing and field delivery, which is really the business model. But every project we run, which is paid, leads to a license, and every license can bring long-term recurring revenue for 5 to 35 years at high margins. So we do have a sales plan and a marketing plan, but at this point, our demand far outstrips our capacity, which is why we're raising our Series A this year to build our own labs and respond to the client demand at commercial speeds. And because we're really multi-sectorial, exits can come from different places with joint ventures or acquisition by application. And big industrial players in aviation and energy, and even the food and beverage sector, have already started asking those questions. So all of Flight's applications are about longer lasting self-protective surfaces in critical environments. And we get very excited when we realize we can embed this technology directly with our customers and give them the power to make better products without changing the way that they do business. But these improvements will last for decades and hopefully also lead to millions, or if not more than tens of millions of gallons of toxic coatings and paints not being used. So we're fighting hard to get this technology out of the lab and into places where it's desperately needed. And we're inviting you in the deaf community to give us your worst problems and let us show you how Flight makes everyday materials extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll turn it over to the judges to ask their questions. I'm sure they have plenty.
Peter, go ahead.
Sure. Dan, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much. You guys and your team have done an amazing job in material science, which is a very tricky field. We've all probably been reading about super hydrophobic materials since we saw, that famous picture in National Geographic of a water droplet on a beetle's back. And it's been a long time coming for anyone to actually commercialize that kind of technology. I think just as an aside, there were a couple things in your presentation I talk about offline to make it a little bit more effective. Kind of took a little while to really understand what the applications were, sort of what the narrative was all about. But I'm very curious. So are you currently in commercial production, or is it still in the lab and you're working with potential clients to get this fully commercialized for deployment in the field?
Well, this technology has been deployed in 2 production environments so far, but where we are as a company is still talking to customers to make sure that the demonstration of the technology works on their products in their environment, and everybody is new. So solar panels are one problem with one kind of manufacturing, and tiny little cardiac stents are another, but aircraft wings are another. So each one of those different sectors wants to take their time, try it out, see what the impact is on their manufacturing and their regulatory environment before they industrialize.
So typically in that process, I mean, you're doing a lot of the proof of concept work for new clients in a lab environment. And then when and if they want to commercialize, you still have that whole commercialization scaling step to do. So that's something you'll have to fund at some future date, correct?
Yeah, that jumps on I'm just going to jump on Peter here real quick. Exactly what is Series A going to be used for? Is it for building commercial manufacturing opportunities, or is it to market, or is it like what's Series A going to be used for?
Well, so it's a good question. And again, the fact that it's been industrialized all the way to production once means that most of our industrial challenges have been met in one area or another. But there are still challenges out there. Again, looking at what this takes to put into production for different industries always looks very different. The outer layer of a pipeline that's on the ground versus an aircraft wing that's in manufacturing all look very different. But it's the same core technology. So the Series A is really for 3 things. Number one, there's quite a big library of intellectual property we want to gather and hold and protect, because we are some of the first ones to come out into the industry and do this. So we want to cement our positions and build that IP. Number two is we're relying on a lot of these external labs and partners to do the work, and it leads to a bit of frustration when the academic partner can't perform the way the commercial companies expect them to. So we believe that we can get the proof of concept turnaround from what is now an 8-week process to a 3-day process, and that'll help us get through our pipeline. And the rest is just about making sure that we are growing in all these different sectors that are exciting simultaneously.
That's one question. You showed a lot of different applications. You showed cameras, you showed body armor, highly diverse potential applications for your technology. But typically, from an investor side, you'd expect an entrepreneur who have identified low-hanging fruit. What's the initial target market? Where are we going to put our focus? Because if we can't demonstrate product market fit in that low-hanging fruit, early adopter market, it's just going to be tougher to do in the other markets. So where is that for you?
We tend to be focused these days on 4 critical markets, which doesn't mean we're ignoring the others. It just means we want to put our efforts into places where we think we can get a reasonably good win without too much in the way of regulatory barriers and get traction, as well as develop the core technology. So one of them is aerospace. That's really where we came from. And we believe that what we can do for the drone and helicopter market is exciting and won't require 7 to 10 years of development like it would in other sectors. 3 of us in the executive team have medical backgrounds, and we know we can get into the medical sector relatively quickly. And there's a huge unmet medical need in cardiac stents and dental implants for us to do. These are small devices that are high value with high repetition that could really use our help. And of course, a lot of attention comes from oil and gas, which again is a diverse set of challenges within one industry, but Rust is the big monster. So if the defense industry is spending 21 billion a year in Rust, that number for the energy sector worldwide annually is 2.3 trillion these days. So naturally, they're very interested in what this might do, even if we just scratch that surface, so to speak, for corrosion in oil and gas. And so we have attention in other industries like food and beverage and the automotive sector who are excited by this, but we're not expecting those to be our low-hanging fruit, if that answers your question.
So how big is this round you're raising?
It is now at 10 million. We have a commitment for about half of it from the venture arm of an oil and gas super major, and another sovereign fund interested in taking the lead in this. So it's going well. I'm sorry?
What valuation?
I wasn't sure if I was allowed to say this in a public forum.
If not, then don't worry about it.
I'm happy to discuss it offline with anybody.
Hopefully more than 10 million then.
So.
Fingers crossed.
So that's a tremendous accomplishment. You guys said you've been working on this for 3 years now?
3 years this week, yes.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
On the go-to-market, there's a lot of regulatory burdens and a lot of the sectors that you're looking to go into. Like, for instance, if you're going to put this on airplane wings, the FAA and many other 3-letter agencies are going to be interested in making sure that that's safe. So you're going to go to drones and other areas with a focus on I guess commercial airlines, that kind of stuff, much later, because of the go-to-market is going to be so much longer.
Well, I'm sorry for what's happening in the commercial aerospace sector these days. It wouldn't be a great time to go out there, even if we didn't have a regulatory problem. But the drones don't have that regulatory problem. If it works, they can fly it as long as they're not carrying human passengers. And we also have quite a bit of opportunity in defense, because they don't necessarily have to go by the FAA for permission to do what they're doing. And if we can demonstrate this, as we intend to do with our SBIR Phase 2 and helicopter blades and some other areas in defense aerospace, then we're good to go as soon as next year.
What about the regulatory hurdles on the medical side?
Well, that's kind of home territory for me. And by demonstrating that I can take a medical device made of stainless steel or titanium and demonstrating that our technique provides clinical benefits but is equivalent to other work that's been done, we can proceed. And there's lots of work that's been done on the clinical side to prove that these textures have clinical value, but the coatings themselves are nano coatings, and the FDA does not like to see those things, wondering where they wind up in the body. So we come along after all this clinical work is done and saying, we can give you super hydrophobic surfaces with no coating. It's just the titanium you've been using already for 20 years. And they're very happy to see it.
What do you see is the exit for a company like yours?
We are less hopeful these days that a giant in the material sector like BASF or someone would come along and swoop us up as a portfolio company. It's much more likely that a company like Boston Neurosciences will see what we're doing in and cardiac stents, and they'll want to take flight medical off the books. And the same thing as those conversations have occurred to us in aviation and in food and beverage from our earliest customers. They want to own that sector and that technology for their sector. So if we wind up having a master company where the IP is, and then subsidiaries that get taken up by, the 800-pound gorillas in each of those industries, each one of those is a potential exit.
Excellent. And so you're going to seek to license this in a lot of different verticals, and a lot.
That's right. That's right. So legal and IP and licensing are a big part of what we're raising for, but yep. It's manageable. We have a really good team behind us with a lot of experience doing this.
Excellent. Peter, everything else?
I'm good too. Christina, Rama, did we want to open this up to the audience to read any of their questions, or what was the format going to be for after Chris and I had our chance?
We do have 4 questions in our Q&A box, I think 3 of which have already been answered along the way. But one of the questions is from Dan Morton, who's asking, can you walk them through a customer engagement or service treatment?
Sure, that's actually a great way to understand our scenarios. So we have a customer in the automotive market that I'm not allowed to name, who really would like to see this technology on headlamps. And if we make because the headlamps now use LED lighting, which aren't hot like they used to be, so the ice accumulates on those surfaces. But in addition, there are LiDAR sensors behind those LED lamps. And the only thing that really defeats the LiDAR sensor is wet conditions. Water droplets scatter LiDAR. So they want to make a super hydrophobic and ice-phobic surface on their headlamp covers. So the challenge is understanding what the material is and how they manufacture, and what are the cost constraints and how long do they have to last. We propose a protocol of testing 2 or 3 different kinds of textures. They put it through their paces after we do our work for about 2 weeks. And if they like it, then we talk about how do we get this laser technique into their shop so they can get rid of, hopefully, a very expensive, costly and toxic chemical process for protection, and replace it with just lasers and move forward. So that second part will probably be a 5 to 8 month engagement, but afterwards it's pure license play, where we drop in once a year and say, how's it going? Do you have new designs for us to look at? Do you want to look at applying this to other parts of the vehicle? And we have this intimate relationship now to build on.
Ooh. I think we have one more comment really from the audience saying if this works, it's the holy grail for the Navy. So I think I've got questions, but I think we're at time. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I can answer the Navy question in 30 seconds. We are trying to engage with the Navy with the SBIR program, but also on the commercial side, both for rust prevention, which of course is a massive deal, but also for the treatment of ship hulls to prevent barnacles and bioslimes from attaching to them, which is a huge performance, maintenance, and fuel cost for them. So that is a holy grail for us. We hope to have a big impact there.
Wonderful. Thanks
everybody for your questions. It's been a privilege.
Thanks, Dan.
So now we switch gear to our second founder for the evening, where we have Brian Lee of Candalytics.
Hi, everyone. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I got one of those Zoom notifications about laggy internet through Dan's pitch, so I've switched over to my phone. Hopefully that fixes things. And now are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. I'm ready to jump in, Christine.
Okay, perfect. You can start.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that the 3D revolution is upon us. We're Candalytics, and we're a LiDAR 3D analytics startup building the digital tools that will harness the power of 3D data. To illustrate just one example of what this means, I want you to imagine that you're now a member of a US Coast Guard boarding team, and your job is to board a suspected smuggling ship to figure out where drugs, weapons, or even victims of human trafficking may be hidden. And you do this by painstakingly measuring every interior compartment of that ship, hand sketching the ship's floor plan, and then manually calculating volumetrics to identify structural anomalies that might be potential smuggling compartments. This process can take days. And do you want to know what tools you have at your disposal? A tape measure, pen, and paper. After 4 back-breaking days, imagine now being told that your team has run out of time, your authorization has expired, and these potential smugglers will be released even though intelligence indicates there's an 85% chance they're hiding something. All too often, these are the disappointing results for our Coast Guardsmen. And make no mistake, this is a billion-dollar problem. $65 billion to be exact. That's the value of illegal substances that flow into the US every year from the maritime domain. And despite being the best resource maritime law enforcement entity in the world, the Coast Guard shockingly fails to stop 91% of all illegally trafficked substances. And what's worse, they're actually unable to interdict 3 out of every 4 ships that they know through intelligence are smuggling drugs. And that's because their current method of finding contraband is primitive, slow, and ineffective. But it doesn't have to be this way. LiDAR is a technology that uses millions of laser pulses to measure space and capture 3D data, rapidly digitizing the physical world. Advancements in commercial off-the-shelf LiDAR hardware means that these types of sensors are more accessible than ever before. Candalytics is a hardware-agnostic 3D analytics software platform that integrates with any scanner and optimizes the time required to go from 3D scan to actionable insights. With Candalytics, LiDAR scanning would allow Coast Guard operators to fully account for space on a suspected smuggling ship in exponentially less time than traditional methods. This 3D data leads to faster actionable insights and more comprehensive deliverables that can be easily visualized, digitally analyzed, and readily shared. These capabilities include fully immersive 3D visualizations, the generation of 3D and 2D engineering specs, as well as powerful change detection. So let's take a look at Candalytics in action. What you're about to see is a 200-foot vessel that would normally take the Coast Guard several days to fully account for. With Candalytics, just 2 hours. This puts a full 3D tool set at the operator's disposal, including the ability to take cross-sections and establish exceptional spatial awareness. This comprehensive visualization enables intuitive identification of suspicious voids that could represent smuggling compartments. Here we see a hole in our data. You can see there's no floor, and you're able to see all the way down to the hull. This is a void, and it's exactly what boarding teams are looking for. Again, there's no requirement for any more measuring tapes, because taking distance, area, and volume measurements is as simple as a click and can be done directly on the model. Every point in this model is a measurement in 3D space. Design schematics that used to take an operator days to sketch by hand can now be generated with a click of a button, providing lightweight engineering-grade documentation that can be quickly shared with key stakeholders and incorporated directly into the Coast Guard's existing workflow. This data opens up a whole new world of analytical possibilities. By leveraging scans of the same or similar ships, we can compare what a vessel should look like with what it actually looks like to further detect anomalies. Then by overlaying those scans, we can create an intelligent differential lit up in Christmas lights. We can detect changes as nuanced as the movement of a conference table, or as nefarious as potentially, as we see here, adding partitions to a compartment. And we can show you what this differential looks like in full 3D, because that's exactly what we did during our demo with the Coast Guard in San Diego. What you're about to see is a Coast Guard cutter we scanned in less than 20 minutes. We scanned it twice, once accessing all compartments, and then the second time, creating synthetic voids by closing off areas of the ship. After running our differential analysis, we could immediately highlight areas in the bow and the stern, here in red, that were not accounted for and could serve as potential smuggling compartments. I know this has been a quick preview, but I hope it's given you a glimpse into the power of Candalytics to harness 3D data. And what you saw highlights Candalytics' threefold value proposition, one that seamlessly integrates 3D collection, analytics, and data management. So first, by putting mobile LiDAR scanners into the hands of operators, a vessel which used to take almost a week to completely measure can now be scanned, rendered, and fully modeled in minutes to hours. Second, Candalytics software will automate 3D analytics, rapidly and intelligently pointing the Coast Guard to the most suspicious areas on a suspected ship to investigate. Third, Candalytics will take these insights and build a 3D data repository so that knowledge and best practices can be shared across the fleet and enhanced through the power of machine learning. But what does all this mean for the Coast Guard? In short, increased efficiency, enhanced operator safety, and greater operational effectiveness. Candalytics will reduce measurement collection time during Coast Guard boardings by 95%. These time savings are analogous to annual personnel and operational cost savings of almost $400 million. And most importantly, this will result in an additional $1.3 billion in drugs interdicted, the equivalent of deploying 5 additional Coast Guard cutters year-round. We're currently in phase 2 of product development, and that is refining our demonstrated prototype into a testable MVP for fielding in this summer's operational evaluation. This will allow us to get important operator feedback to further optimize our user interface. And in parallel, we'll be further ruggedizing the COTS hardware and laying the groundwork for integrating our solution with the Coast Guard's data architecture. As fielding of our solution scales, this data flow will give us the foundation for training and integrating machine learning algorithms and developing even more advanced 3D analytics. As an end-to-end solutions provider, Candalytics' business model benefits from multiple revenue streams: SaaS subscriptions for our software, maintenance contracts for our data management service, and hardware leases as a value-added reseller. Moreover, partnering with the Coast Guard unlocks another incredible source of value: access to data. The Coast Guard conducts nearly 5,000 boardings every year and has a doctrinal requirement to document each of these boardings. At scale, this means that Candalytics would have access to the largest 3D vessel data set in the world. We'll leverage this robust data to train industry-leading machine learning algorithms, develop proprietary analytics, and expand from our initial beachhead market. What we're adopting is a land and expand strategy, starting with the center bullseye maritime drug interdiction market. This alone was estimated to be $1.7 billion in 2020, which was actually a 27% increase from the previous year. This growth is in response to a significant and sustained rise in the volume of illegally trafficked substances, which has grown at a 5-year CAGR of over 31%. This beachhead market positions us to export our end-to-end solution to related maritime, defense, and commercial markets propelled by the growing prevalence of 3D data. And we've already begun this expansion, recently winning an Air Force SBIR and SCTR, as well as making inroads with organizations like the American Bureau of Shipping. Candalytics is well positioned among competitors. Most LiDAR and 3D data companies primarily focus on a single industry, and none of these companies are currently serving the maritime market. Additionally, Candalytics is differentiated by providing an end-to-end solution across collection, analytics, and data management, while also tailoring that solution for operators at the tactical point of need. Unlike other LiDAR or analytics companies who compete on precision or range, Candalytics' trailblazing integration focuses on minimizing time from scan to insight, creating an optimized solution for the timelines required in the most demanding 3D data use cases. Candalytics is the ideal team with the ideal partners to deliver this solution. We're graduate students, military veterans, and engineers from Harvard and MIT with professional experiences in intelligence, consulting, finance, and technology. But most importantly, we all share a passion for leveraging innovation for national security. We were the winners of the Pentagon's Defense Innovation Accelerator, and we're formally partnered with the Navy's preeminent LiDAR research lab. We were also recently invited to join a Blue Tech Innovation Hub. Over the course of nearly 200 stakeholder interviews, our team has not only developed an intimate understanding of the customer pain point, but also fostered enthusiastic demand for Candalytics' solution. In addition to 2 live demonstrations, we've briefed senior Coast Guard leadership and have a formal pilot program this summer. In addition to this traction, Candalytics was recently awarded 2 government contracts. We're invited to speak at this year's Consumer Electronics Showcase, and we're backed by MIT's Innovation Fund, as well as partners from 6 major VCs. As we look ahead, Candalytics is starting by addressing a pressing pain point in maritime law enforcement, and then expanding into related commercial markets by building an end-to-end platform that harnesses the power of 3D data at enterprise scale. But we'd love your help. We're seeking angel and pre-seed investments to accelerate us through a critical juncture of product testing, commercialization, and expanding our technical team. We'd also value the opportunity to leverage DEF's powerful network for access to mentorship, commercialization expertise, technical talent, and investors that will empower us to ultimately achieve our vision of making 3D data accessible, intelligent, and impactful. Thank you so much for your engagement, and happy to answer any questions at this time.
Chris, you want to go first this time?
Sure. Great presentation. Thanks so much. It's also incredible technology. It's having had a .gov address for so long and having to do so much in the customs side. There's no end to the bad guys. So appreciate you doing this. What you're developing for the government. First of all, I guess start out. What's your raise? What are you hoping to raise in this pre-seed round, and exactly what, if I were to invest, what am I buying? What runway does that give you, and what are you hoping to get to do with that money?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. So we're looking at a $500,000 pre-seed round. between institutional capital as well as angel investors. That gives us a runway of about 12 months, probably 12 to 15, if I'm being honest. But in terms of anchoring that capital raise to a milestone, what that allows us to do is prove out our technology, specifically in the maritime law enforcement use case, scale that technology, and then posture ourselves to do that expansion into related markets in defense and maritime. Does that answer your question, Chris?
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's so much technology, and there's been so much money spent in looking at or trying to find ways of looking in cargo containers. And would this technology be used, or could it be used in that case, just to displace the antiquated technology that's already been deployed by the government and at ports?
Yeah, so definitely we've had multiple discussions with folks at port specifically about that container use case. I think it's a little bit different than our core use case, right? Because I think in terms of container, like understanding what's in container, if you're not using X-ray vision, right, you're trying to do more like object recognition and classification, which is along our roadmap, as I hope you saw in our product development roadmap, right? But what we're bringing to the Coast Guard is a bit more simple than that, which allows us to bring it to bear very quickly. And that is just looking for structural anomalies. So this isn't X-ray vision. We're not promising to put an X marks the spot on where the drugs are hidden. But, Coast Guardsmen have told us looking for drugs is like looking for a needle in a haystack. And by prioritizing these structural anomalies, we're able to shrink that haystack and allow the Coast Guard to be more effective in their time and their attention, so they can find more of those needles.
Peter.
Sorry. Hey, Brian, that was a super effective presentation. Really awesome. And I always love it when people use statistics in their presentation. You have lots of great statistics, percentages, things like that. It really clarifies the scope of the problem and how many things can be fixed that are broken. I'm curious, how much have you raised to date?
Yeah, so in terms of institutional capital, we have $50,000 from that angel kind of conglomeration network. We also do have that non-dilutive funding through a grant from MIT, as well as—
How much was that?
That was $25,000.
Okay.
And then we also have the SIBR and STTR that we just were awarded.
So in terms of your roadmap, clearly your first big client and what could dramatically change the revenue stream is the Coast Guard. Do you have a sense at this point of what it is they need to see and what it is you have to do to get an actual contract with them?
Yeah, I think that we've done a really great job in engaging with the Coast Guard and staying close to that customer in terms of their preference, right? So in our demonstrations, we use surveys to get feedback on how we could make this thing more usable for them. And I think in terms of what we're trying to prove out this summer, it kind of falls into two different pillars, right? It's making the solution usable for the operator, and that involves optimizing the user experience and the user interface, right? So we've picked out a commercial off-the-shelf hardware that literally only has one button, and what we're trying to do is build a software solution that is also analogous, an easy one-button solution. The Coast Guard, the people who will be using this technology at that tactical point of need, the Coast Guard leadership, lovingly refers to them as knuckle draggers, right? So like we're trying to make this as simplified and as effective as possible. What I think is, so that's for the operator side. For the decision makers, we talked to the Coast Guard, and one of their big initiatives on the R&D side is something called the next gen boarding concept. This is a R&D initiative that's already received funding this fiscal year. And we've been told by that program manager that they see a LiDAR-based solution as being part of that initiative. So what we're hoping to prove out for those types of decision makers and the commanders who make these types of decisions is, first of all, we can move the needle on the Coast Guard's KPI of drugs interdicted, right? That is, in every Coast Guard performance report to Congress, that is what they want to see. The second point is asset availability. Right now, the reason the Coast Guard isn't able to do as much as they can is because there's a big ocean, not that many assets, and these boardings take up the full attention and focus of each of these assets. Coast Guard cutter commanders have told us that when they send their cutter after a bad guy vessel, they get pinged an average of 3 times of about 3 other smuggling ships that Jayat of South and other big name intelligence agencies know are smuggling drugs that they simply can't do anything about. So on the decision maker side, it's drugs interdicted and asset availability.
So if effectively the hardware is going to be mostly off the shelf and your value add is going to be the software, the analytics, what is your moat going to be? What's going to stop someone else from taking any other LiDAR off the shelf hardware, putting a great UI on it and taking the market?
Yeah, so what's proprietary of what we're doing is optimizing the software as it relates to ingesting the data, decimating that data to make it even more dynamic and responsive, and then spitting out the analytics and the insights that that operator needs. So really, the double-edged sword of 3D data is it's comprehensive, right? Like every point in that point cloud has an XYZ value, has a color value, has an intensity value, right? But whether you're the Coast Guard and another user, you don't need all that to fill your job to be done. And what we're optimizing for is a platform that meets the customer's need in terms of understanding what insights they need from that data and quickly delivering it to them.
I'm trying to recall the competitive landscape. What is your competitive landscape?
I can go back to that, Pete, if that's helpful.
Excellent. It's excellent. And their ability to be able to deploy and to be able to analyze a ship, for instance, is it anywhere near as close to as the timing of yours? You said yours is 20 minutes?
Yeah, so for a 100-foot vessel is about 20 minutes. For the complexity that comes with a 200-foot vessel, which is the first vessel you saw, it's about 2 hours to go from scan to that full model, right? We're partnered with kind of the Navy's #1 lab when it comes to applying LiDAR technology to warships. They've mainly been using it for like back office engineering type use cases. And for them, like to get a similarly sized ship to engineering spec and fully modeled, you're talking about days and not hours. So I think that in itself shows how even in a very similar market, even in a very similar use case for the scanning of ships, right? There's 2 different flavors of how you can leverage 3D data to accomplish a different job.
Do you have a sense of how you'll price this out for your beachhead client of the Coast Guard? Like, what does that contract look like in your best guess?
Yeah. So I'd love to take this offline, Peter, but just to give you kind of a little bit of background, we know exactly what the Coast Guard is paying for their current solution. And their current solution is a tough box with a measuring tape, flashlight, a couple of prods, bore scopes, and stuff like that. The Coast Guard is grossly overpaying for this. You can look up, FC Space Accountability Boarding Kit on Google, and you'll see exactly what this is. So we've got a really great idea of what the Coast Guard is currently paying. And we also have a great idea based on our knowledge of not only personnel costs, but also hourly cutter operations costs of how much we can save the Coast Guard. And by combining those 2 things, I think we can do value-based pricing that falls into the Coast Guard sweet spot. Sorry to be, that was kind of a half answer, but I really believe we have the puzzle pieces to fit to make that happen.
Then finally, before we go, I know we have some questions from the audience as well. What's your path to exit? What do you think is who are your suitors? Who would be your suitors?
Yeah, so I think that of course, like we would love to see this thing scale and become the Palantir of 3D data, right? So obviously, IPO is always on the table, but there's obviously multiple steps towards that. I think in terms of exit opportunities, and some of them that have been emergent through some of the inroads that we've seen, we've gotten a lot of interest from LiDAR hardware manufacturers to partner with us as a way to get into a very novel use case and to be a trailblazer in the quote unquote tacticalization of LiDAR. So I think that's an option for some sort of exit or acquisition. On the other hand, we've also had inroads with several primes as it relates to establishing a prime protege relationship. And I think that is also a possibility.
Excellent. Christine.
Again, we'll go through some of the questions we have from the audience. Some you have already covered, but one of them is going back to the point about the technology and what does Cannalytic own? Like how, so one of the question is how many, if do you have any utility patents and what type of IP will you own from the product?
Yeah, so right now we don't, go ahead, sorry, Christine, I think I cut you off.
Oh, it's just about the IP. What do you have any IP right now? Is the general question.
So as of right now, we plan on filing a provisional patent for the software optimization, but that has not been filed yet.
Another question from the audience is the 500K raise. You mentioned 12-month runway, and you say it could be more. I think you showed 7 people on your team slide. So the question is, who is full-time, and how does that work in terms of runway and people?
Yeah, so I mean, we're very lucky in that all 7 of those people are currently students, and we've been able to really leverage the MIT and Harvard network, not only for engineering but for entrepreneurial support. So 4 out of those 7 people, the non-founders, are all interns for us, and they're being paid through the university system. So we've been able to leverage top tier MIT computer science talent without having to come out of pocket. So to that point, that $500,000 would be to allow our founders to pursue this thing full time, as well as bring in full-time engineering talent so we can really accelerate our product development.
Great. Another question, what's your commercial customer? Who is your commercial customer?
Yeah, so the Coast Guard has actually been really opportune in that they straddle kind of the government and defense space and like the commercial shipping space, right? So one of the other functions that the Coast Guard fulfills, in addition to drug interdiction, is vessel inspection. So think the equivalent of a building inspector in the maritime world, right? So we've explored this use case with the Coast Guard, essentially creating a differential of how a vessel should look versus how it does look according to the blueprints, and thereby allowing them to inspect kind of like illegal modifications, renovations that were not approved, safety violations, stuff like that. In fact, the Coast Guard actually outsources this inspection role to agencies called classification societies. The largest one is the American Bureau of Shipping, and that's who we've made the most inroads with in terms of setting up a demo for this and becoming essentially a certified vendor for them.
Great. Do we have time for a final question? I think what one is, I guess one question you mentioned about the data, that you'd be owning the data. So for example, if you're talking about these government customers, will they give you their data? Will you own that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that we were also very lucky with the Coast Guard in that when the Coast Guard collects this data, it's non-classified because it's for a law enforcement function, right? So I think that kind of eases some of the data restrictions. But at the end of the day, the value of that maritime data set is in training an algorithm that can help operators be even more smart about identifying where drugs could be hidden. As long as we have access to that data, we don't need to own that data in order to train those algorithms.
Cool. Well, there are more questions from the audience, but I think we're running up against time. So maybe we'll wrap it there. But excellent presentation.
Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you at the next one.